good evening, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast, hosted by the Empowering Perspective community. We are your hosts for this week's discussion. I am Dwayne Dwyer, also known as the Mindset Coach. Right beside me, you have the Uncle Junior himself, the Unc with the Funk, also known as Mr. Garfield Martin. Below me, we have my good friend, Mr. Christopher McClellan, the host of Across the Table with Chris McClellan. He is still the angry guy trying to learn. And right beside him, you have poor man's Dr. Phil, Mr. Roland Walker, the man of many hats. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this fine Friday evening?
I
I'm doing,
I'm well. I'm well. I'm well.
I'm doing well, man. Doing well.
Good.
Ready.
I'm doing better than some because I hear that rain and thunder outside.
Oh,
I'm inside.
we got to
Oh,
get
that
this
is
up out of
amazing
him.
sleeping weather.
Yeah, but he in Texas. That weather
Ah,
can change quick.
Humid.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're missing our brother, Mr. Gaddy, this evening. That's okay. He is actually doing his husband duties. So shout out to our brother. We miss him, and we miss the value that he always add. And with that being said, man, I also want to give a shout out to the people that's in the chat, man. We love you guys. We value you, and you always seem to add value to the show. So welcome, Michelle Ray. Welcome, Miss Charlotte Jordan. Welcome, Natasha Jones. Good to see you. Welcome, Lisa Keys. And anybody else who is with us, by all means, go ahead and jump in the chat and let us know that you're here so that we can celebrate your presence. Because we always always look forward to seeing you. I love it when Uncle Junior jump in and say hi, Mom. Um, Listen, real quick, I kind of want to put something out real quick. The Empowering Perspective Membership Program, I kind of got a lot of information, a lot of questions in relation to it. And so, real quick, I just kind of want to put it out there. So, before we dive into today's podcast, I just want to share some exciting news about it. So, Empowering Perspective Membership Program, otherwise known as EPMP, right? EPMP is designed to support your personal and professional growth. As a member, you'll gain exclusive access to valuable resources, including access to thought provoking member only discussions, inspiring periodic messages, and, an amazing community of like minded individuals, among some other amazing things that we're just going to give to you. So if you're on a computer, look up under the screen. You'll see the join button. Go ahead and click it. And if you're on your mobile device, go ahead and look in the show notes and you'll see the link to join the membership program. And I think you will thoroughly enjoy that. So, back to this week's conversation. And so this week we're going to talk about, I'm staying in my lane. This week we're going to talk about unlocking your full potential, right? Continuation. This is week 3, right? And so the previous weeks we talked about the 7 types of leadership. And again, what we do is we connect the dots. So we connect leadership with family living because again, like I said before, I think we may have missed the mark in our earlier years when it comes down to leadership within the family. And for those people who are in leadership positions, they may have missed the mark as well. And so, with that being said, we started off with formal power. Now, formal power is broken down into 3 categories, right? You have legitimate power. And again, legitimate power pertains to your position, the authority that comes to you through your position. And as the legitimate power sets the conditions, you lead into what is known as coercive power. Now, coercive power is the ability to punish or do harm based upon a person's behavior and non-compliance with rules and regulations. But then you also can incentivize behavior through the other type of power, which is known as reward power. And this is something that you put out early enough so that people's behavior can be shaped and conditioned so that it can add value to the environment. That takes us to this week's conversation, which is all focused on personal power. Now, I just want to give them to you real quick, right? Just so that everybody know, you have referent power, you also have expert power, and you also have informational power, and then last but not least, you have connection power. Now, going back up to what is known as referent power, because I think this is key. And I want to make sure that I stress this point and make it abundantly clear. Immature leaders and parents, they lead according to their positional authority. Therefore, what they do is they use reward power and they use coercive power based upon their position. This is what immature leaders and immature parents do. Why? Because they're still learning how to be when it comes down to that position that they're in. As they start to develop and become more comfortable, then they get into what is known as personal power. And starting off with the first one is referent power. Referent power is the power that comes from one's charisma, personality, or influence. So, gentlemen, the first question I want to drop in your lap is, what are some of the key attributes and qualities that enable leaders and parents to build referent power, and how can they cultivate these traits in themselves to become positive role models?
For some reason, I knew I was going to have to start this thing off. So, um, I would say one of the key attributes or qualities is consistency, and kind of sort of doing the right thing. As a parent, it's there's a lot on parents' shoulders. There's a lot that goes on in the day-to-day activities. You have to plan for today, you have to plan for tomorrow, you have to plan for next week, you have to plan for the day that you exit this earth. Like, there's a lot of different things that parents have to go through and a lot of things they have to plan. And sometimes amongst all of those things, we can sometimes forget some of the things that's really important when it comes to raising our children. You know what I mean? And having conversations, they need to have some sort of level of trust in us, and the trust is going to come with building the relationship, and the building a relationship comes with positive interactions over time. And which is going to create a certain level of consistency. You know what I'm saying? So it's like parents have to be consistent with being positive role models inside of the home, having conversations, and ensure that they're passing on the knowledge and information that their children need in order to be successful parents. I mean, to be successful children and adults later on in life. And a way that they can cultivate these traits is in themselves to become positive role models is, continue to learn, get information, and practice these positive things with your children. Spend time with them, teach them different qualities that you want them to learn, and yeah, teach them all the different qualities that you want them to learn. That was a lot.
Not only do they have to teach those qualities, they have to be those qualities.
They have to be them. They have to
It's-
model them.
Yes, your kids are
And
looking at what you do. Your team is looking at what you do. We are no, they are no, it's, we are past the point of do as I say, not as I do when it comes to the kids, when it comes to your team. We are past that point because they are not going to listen to a word you are saying if you are not portraying what you are saying. You have to be what you want your kids to be. You understand what I'm saying? Or at least give them the example that is necessary for them to be the kind of person that you want them to be. And it also has to be their decision too. You said something, Unc. You said trust. Parents have to trust that their children are smart enough to know right from wrong, and they are smart enough to know what they should and should not be doing, and they are smart enough to convey what is helping and what is hurting and not take it as an ego shot. So do team leaders. Team leaders need to listen to their team, and they also need to display the type of behaviors that they want that they want their team to exhibit. You cannot, I do not believe that you can lead without being the example. And the team has to understand that the leader is not perfect. The leader is going to fall. The leader is going to mess up. Do not hold that against them because they are not perfect. You understand what I'm saying? So it's a trust thing, but the trust goes both ways, but it's a different kind of trust when you're talking parent, child, team leader, team. The team leader has to trust the team to know that they can do what the job is laid out. The parent has to trust the child to know, like I said earlier, They know right from wrong. They know what to do and what not to do. And the other way around, the child needs to trust that the parent knows what they're talking about. The team needs to trust that the team leader kind of knows how the business is supposed to flow, how the plan is supposed to lay out, and that he or she can play to their strengths. So there is a trust, but it's a different type of trust when you're dealing with those two types of things.
I think when it comes to attribute, when we're referencing reverent power, man, you would find people like your influencers, like your pastor preachers, like your motivational speakers. They have a sense of reverent power because they have the ability to be empathetic as well as uplifting the people, so people feel comfortable telling them things or comfortable being in their space, and they make the people feel like they can do anything. And that's a part of being a parent. That's a part of being a leader, because you should want to influence your subordinates or however you people you work with. People like I want to influence people every day. I don't care whether I work with you or not. Even just merely speaking to people, I'm a person like, man, I want to speak life into a person. If you look down, you seem down, I want to help you lift your head. I want to be that type of person, and that takes hard work. For one, you have to know yourself, and you have to have that self esteem within you to realize that things happen to you for a reason, not just so that it can happen in this woe is me moment. No, it happens so that you can grow through it. And when you can look at things like that, you don't look at it in a negative light. And I think that's one of the things that us as leaders and parents, we have to look at, because everyone goes through life, everyone. But who do you have in your corner that will help lift your head, that will help encourage you and tell you that it's going to get better? You need those people around and in your life, in your space, and you need to become one of them.
Yeah. See, I love all what you guys are saying, but I think I kind of want to, I'm not pushing back on anything, but I want to make sure that we all understand that this is not just a flatline thing. I think sometimes what we have to say, and I started off by saying that I talked about the immature versus the mature. And Chris, you said it. You said, the team needs to understand that there's no such thing as a perfect leader. Well, unfortunately, when kids are young, they don't necessarily understand that their parents aren't perfect. You see what I'm saying? They just view them as their parents, perfect or non-perfect. That really doesn't matter in their mind. That's just their parents. So based upon what they see their parents do and the things that they display, that's what they experience, and that becomes their norm. I think when it comes down to it, we have to understand, and I'm going to talk about it from both perspectives. We have to understand that there's the immature side of a thing, and the immature side of a thing is where I am learning how to do, right? We talk about do a lot, but I'm learning how to do. So, in other words, I want to be in compliance with the rules and regulation. And so, compliance is one thing, and within the scope of compliance, that is just me making sure that from a worker's perspective, the team member's perspective, I am learning how to do my job according to my job description. Because at the end of the day, I just want my supervisor, my manager, or whatever to say, hey, Dwayne, good job. Right. So as a child, I am learning how to be compliant to the rules that my parents established for me. Because one of the things I would love for them to say, hey, Dwayne, son, good job. However, there's a transition that takes place, because you hear me talks about making sure parents make sure that they catch those gates that the children go through. There's a transition that takes place. And that transition that takes place is when they go from compliance to commitment. And once they transition over to commitment, now it's different, because they're not necessarily looking to make sure that they do a good job. They look at that particular point in time, they're looking to make sure that they embody the good job. They embody the vision that was shared with them from their leaders through the team, right? So, because the leaders cast vision, the subordinates adopt that vision and then make it their own. So they don't turn around and say, hey, Roland, we got to go do this because Uncle Junior said we got to do it. No, it's that, Roland, we got to go do this. That's just it. If I'm the leader, I'm just telling you what we need to do. I don't necessarily lean on another person's authority and try to use that to my advantage. Transition on the other side, when you start talking about children now, they look at doing things to assist their parent, because I don't want mama and daddy, when they get off work, to have to come home and cook dinner. I don't want them to have to come home and clean the house. We need to, as siblings, we need to make sure that the house is clean. We need to make sure that all of these things are happening, simply because we love our parents care for us, they work hard. In order to get to that point, I do agree with everything that you guys are saying. I just want to make sure that everybody understand that this just doesn't happen automatically. This is something that you got to put time, energy, and effort in. You're looking to grow and continue to be in the best version of yourself, so that you can be the best parent to that child. What does that really mean? That means presence, like Uncle Junior said, is a thing. Not just being there, being in the house, being in the room. No, you're actually present, you're engaging, you're talking, you're inquiring, you're doing all those things, because your child needs to understand that you have some sort of care about what's going on in their life. You're asking them about their day at school, you're asking them about how things are at work, you're asking them, how is your relationship with Tommy or Tamika or whatever, because it happens, it's a thing. You don't make them feel uncomfortable about it. You create an environment so that they feel comfortable talking about it. You display those things that we call, in today's society, emotional intelligence, right? Which, when I was growing up, wasn't a thing. We knew nothing about emotional intelligence growing up. So, transition, we struggled with emotional intelligence as parents. We become emotionally intelligent parents. What does that mean? We teach our children that, first and foremost, your feelings are real, they're not weapons. That's the first thing that parents need to help their children to understand. Don't use your weapon against anyone. I mean, don't use your weapon. Don't use your emotions against anyone, or in any environment, trying to shape it and fit what you want. That's the thing. It's not about what you want, it's about the higher picture. What is the vision of the environment at work? What is the goal or the vision of the family? If families don't set a vision and cast vision to the children, then the children have no idea what the entire family as a unit is working toward. Let's make no mistake about it. A family is a team. If we don't understand that, then we're missing the big mark. So when we start talking about these things, presence is a thing, emotional intelligence is a thing, perseverance is a thing. Teach your child, whatever you say that you're going to do, you hold firm to your word and do that. So, parents, like Chris said, not only should you model those behaviors, you need to instill and inject those behaviors in those children as well, because they're looking, not just listening. They're looking, they're absorbing, and they are constantly learning, simply because your personality, your charismatic trait, your character is one of the most important things that you develop within the home. And again, on the other side, when it comes down to the work environment, it holds true the exact same way. Your subordinates, your team is looking at the leader. They're looking to see how the leader responds to adversity. If you ever see a commanding officer that literally throws a fit when rounds start going down range, most of the organization is going to follow in suit. And it's an old saying that goes along with that: speed of the leader, speed of the team. And that is true beyond measure. So, with that being said, gentlemen, I love your response and I greatly appreciate that. And man, I'm seeing there's a lot of people in the chat that I have not yet acknowledged. So, I want to make sure I do that. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize. Welcome to the show, Vandora Nicole. Crystal Everett, good to see you. Ravonda Jackson, good to see you. Hannah Glass, what's going on? Cassandra McKenzie, Bernadette Simmons, Miss Verlene McCoy, always good to see you. Tamika Watts, good to see you. I think I got everybody. Absolutely. And you guys are putting some phenomenal points in the chats as well. Natasha Jones said, building referent power really is about demonstrating the values and attributes that you want your kids and or your team to demonstrate. Absolutely. I agree 100%. Because if you don't model what you speak, it's not authentic. And trust me, people can sense authenticity a mile away, or the lack of authenticity. So great point. Let me see. Lisa asks, Do parents seek a child's admiration, or do children give it to them because they know this is the person who cares for them? And she's talking a toddler's age. I think that's a great question. Go ahead. I will turn that over to the fellas and let them jump on that first.
I think it's both. I think it's kind of both, because me having a bunch of children and a bunch of grandchildren, when you don't want to be the favorite, but you want to be the favorite. You want to be somebody that they can turn to and lean on and get wise counsel from. But that comes through your history with them, and your history is current. Like every day, you're producing history, so they remember that. So when you said something and you stuck with it and you did what you said, they remember that. So then they say, man, I can count on Papa. I can count on Dad, because he said this and he actually did it. He's an honest person. So to their knowledge, they don't know all the dirt, all the hurts that you produce. They know the history that you're producing with them currently. So the admiration comes where you want them to look at you in a better way than other people did, because like, man, I'm gonna do it better with them. And then you are seeking it, but you also want to admire them for the building blocks that you're producing within them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's both as well. I think, parents seek it, and I think children do as well. And I think it can be beneficial for both as long as it's not abused or manipulated. You know what I mean? I think as a parent, we want to be that role model, but I think that, if you want to be the role model, it's important that you model the role at the same time. So I think, I want, like Roland said, like, you kind of sort of in the back of your mind, not that you're competing against the other parent, but you do want your children to be able to come to you and talk to you about certain things and stuff like this. Not that you get jealous if they go to talk to somebody else. My thing is, at the end of the day, do we get the information? You know what I'm saying? But it does feel good sometimes when they choose you to come and talk to you and stuff like that. And I think that, sometimes kids, what I mean, some of us who have siblings, sometimes we want to feel like, we are the favorite sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, what I mean, when there's that mutual respect, or there's that mutual that, people that underline where I kind of sort of want to be the favorite child, and, the parent kind of sort of wants to be the favorite, the parent at the same time. I think it can work, like I said, to be beneficial for both, because I think you can build trust there, you can build respect there, and you can, it can create a sense of wanting to do the right thing and wanting to respect the relationship and put that first. So I think it's both, even at a toddler's age.
You should definitely start doing all of those things at a very young age, because you do not want your child to grow up resenting you for not doing so. You do not want your child to grow up resenting you for not being the person that you were trying to turn that child into. You do not want that child to resent you for not holding to your word. They will grow to mistrust you, and then you will no longer have a relationship with that child.
Yeah, I like that. I love everything you guys said, and I don't disagree. I'm just going to give a different perspective when it comes down to it. I think a parent does what they do, not necessarily seeking the admiration when it comes down to the child. I think they do what they do because, first and foremost, kind of like what I said previously, first and foremost, they do what they do out of sheer responsibility because they're learning how to be a parent. And I think as time progresses, they do what they do out of the desire to helping their child become the best version of an adult that they can be. I think admiration is something that just happened along in the process. So they don't necessarily seek the admiration. They seek to make their children the best versions of themselves. They seek to make their children just awesome individuals. Listening and hearing how teachers respond to, how they behave at school, and things of that nature, and then making micro adjustments within the scope of the development of that child. I think that's the thing that they do. And then admiration shows up as that child transition from compliance to commitment, because now I go to Chris, or if Chris was my dad, I go to Chris simply because if anybody got the answer for me, it's my dad. If anybody has the word I need to hear at this particular point in time, it's my dad. So absolutely, it starts as a toddler, but it starts as a toddler because we train them up in the ways that they should go. And then as they transition, it's not so much as about training now. We're making micro adjustments, or we're nurturing and advising and doing those things because they're mature individuals at this point. And then admiration just happens. So seeking it, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but it's just part of the process. And you guys, I know you guys have experience, especially in the Army. I did not seek to admire any one of my commanders, but I would tell you that I had a few commanders that I absolutely admire simply because of their character and how they treat people when it comes down to how they lead their organization in its entirety. So again, great responses. But like I said, I just kind of want to throw a different spin on that. Code Talk, brother, good to see you. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much, sir. We greatly appreciate you. We
What up,
value
Vic?
you, and it's always good to see you on a Friday night, man. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Vic.
I know, right? And he has his own show for there as well. So by
Mr.
all means,
Accountable Masculinity himself.
absolutely. So by all means, go check him out. He does his, and also an author as well. I don't want to leave that out. Brother got 2 books out there as well. So again, welcome to the show, brother. Always good to see you. Cassandra McKenzie, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate that. And with that being said, as always, value added. We appreciate you. So continue to move forward because I want to get as far along as we possibly can on this conversation because, again, I think we're uncovering some things tonight. So we're going to move into expert power now because I think most people, most of us have a good understanding of referent power. So, expert power, again, which is the power that comes from one's knowledge, skills, or expertise. So, the first question under expert power is what are some ethical considerations that may arise when leaders and parents exercise expert power?
Ethical considerations. I'm going to speak from a different perspective. One of them could be that the expert power may not even come from you in the first place. It may come from your team or it may come from your child. You have to know your team. I said this last week. As a leader, you must understand that you are not the smartest person in the room. You must rely on your team. Your team probably has some insight that you do not know, especially if you're watching from a distance and your team is in the field. They may have some things that they can come back to you and say, okay, I know you said this, but this works out better. Maybe we can implement this and see how this works out for the team. I do not know as far as being a parent because I am not one. I can only say that, again, it would kind of flow the same way. Your child is in the field, so your child may have some knowledge that you do not have. Parents must understand that they are from a different era than your child. So your child has insight that you do not have because they are living in it. You are just watching because you have already lived it, because you have already been a child. Now you are in a different role. May help to listen to your child every once in a while. It does not mean that he is questioning your power. Get out of your... I'm not doing that tonight. It does not mean that your child is questioning you as an adult. It means that your child has insight about the current society that they are living in that you do not have. So you might need to change a few things. You cannot raise your child the way that you were raised. It cannot happen because there are 2 different eras. I think I said this last week and we all agreed. That boils down to adaptability. Parents must adapt, leaders must adapt. And it is not about you, it is about your team and it is about your child. That is it.
What are some ethical considerations that may arise when leaders and parents exercise expert power? I wrote down transparency. At the end of the day, you know, Chris talked about it. Just because you're the leader, it does not mean that you know everything. You know, there may be a situation that you're in where someone is coming to you for information and you're in that leadership position as a parent or in the job and you may not know the information. You know what I mean? And it is unethical to put that person in a situation just because of your ego or because you really don't know something, but you know, you hold a certain position, you know. So you know, there have been people who, because they're in a certain position, have, you know, they haven't done, you know, everything ethical. You know, there are teachers who have been, you know, inappropriate with students. You know what I'm saying? So um I think that when it comes to being a leader, you have to be transparent. If you don't know something, I think it's a way that you can address it and let the team under you or the children under you know that you don't know something. Get back to them, get the information, and then maybe you have to address it then. But like I said, you know, some of the ethical considerations with it is transparency. And if, you know, that information, like, you can only, if you don't know something, it's okay to say that you don't know something, you know. Because like I said, I think it can cause a lot of problems when people just are going just based off of their rank or, you know, just because they're in a certain position.
I think ethical consideration could be legalities, whether or not it's something is legal. Because when we were still in the military, and Colorado and Washington State said marijuana is legal, so you had people at Fort Lewis and Fort Carson saying, "Well, I can smoke because it's legal here." It's legal for them. You don't fall under them. So ethical consideration is, I can't say it's okay for you to do something that's still illegal for you to do simply because it's legal on the outside. So as a leader, I still got to stand on the book. I can't stand on, well, yeah, you're right. It sounds good, because then we both going up crap creek. So instead of doing something like that, putting us both in jeopardy, let us say we won't do this because this is what we fall under. And the expert isn't me or you, but it's the book. And that's how sometimes you got to lead with the book. You can't just say, okay, well, I think, because no one cares what you think when the book says this is what it is. It's black and white right here.
I love it. I love it. I'm loving what everybody is saying under this particular question, because I'm agreeing 100%. First and foremost, leaders, you're not the smartest person in the room. If you think you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. Everybody heard that before, right? Same thing with employees, right? You're not the smartest person in the room. So don't be so quick to open your mouth to jump to just so that you can be recognized for having the first answer. I think, and I think somebody mentioned that, Chris. I think you mentioned that first about ego. Yeah, what we need to do is keep our ego in check and realize that expert power is a thing, and really the true power that lies within expert power is the collective consciousness of the entire group. When we put our minds together and think as a team, what you'll find is that the power that one person had is now exacerbated by the number of people that's on the actual team itself. I like the fact you said, Uncle Junior, it's okay to say I don't know. I think a lot of times some people find themselves in the space of feeling like they got to have an answer. You do not have to have an answer for everything. The last thing you want to be deemed as is a person who does not tell the truth. So making stuff up just because you graduated from MSU, hopefully that's Michigan State University and not making stuff up university, right? So you have to understand that you don't have to just say something for the sake of saying something. Sometimes it's okay to be quiet and say, you know what, Uncle Junior, or you know what, son, I don't know, but if you give me a minute, I'll find it for you. And let's chair this for now. And let's have this conversation at a later point in time. I think what you'll find is that people will have more respect for that than for you to give a response, and then they later find out that that response is the wrong response. Go ahead, Chris.
No, you said something. You said, let's shelve this for a minute, or let's work it out together. That is, Unc, you already said it, so I'm going to say it. That involves letting go of your ego. Power and ego sometimes are viewed as synonymous. Because I have this power, my ego is telling me that I can do this just because I have this power, especially if you have power over people. Not understanding that without those people, you have no power. Work with your people. Have a conversation with your child and understand where your child is coming from, instead of taking everything that they say that is against what you told them, or the fact that they have a rebuttal that actually makes sense to what you told them as a blow to your fragile ego. I said I wasn't going to do this tonight. It's Cinco de Mayo. Everybody is celebrating. I said I wasn't going to do this tonight. So I'm chilling.
Not Cinco de Mayo. I love it. I love it. But yeah, absolutely. We have to understand that again, and I have to go back to it, right? It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to get to the point of saying that, hey, let's kind of do this. Or, like Chris just said, say, you know what? I tell you what, you research it and then bring it back to the table and then we'll sit down and discuss it. That is a great teaching point. There's nothing wrong with telling your child or telling your subordinate to go research a thing because I don't know, right? And then once you find that, let's sit down and talk about it and see how we can actually implement it based upon your input.
Let's compare notes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a great point. I think another thing I want to kind of bring to the table when it comes down to expert power as well is because a lot of times we get into this big hurry, and I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to that point. I'm sorry, but we get into this big hurry just to be consumers of information. I gotta know. I gotta get this. I gotta get this. I gotta get this. Why? Because I want to be the one to tell everybody what I know, right? I think there's a danger in that, right? If you just want to be a consumer of information just so that you can regurgitate the information, but the information that you regurgitated, you have not put it into practice. It is not part of your character. It has absolutely nothing to do with who you are, but you're smart. At some point, you get to the point their environment and get to the point to where they will literally behave like they don't care how smart you are because your ability to be smart has not transcended into your ability to be a person to be. That's it. So you being smart does not transcend it into your ability to be, and that can become an issue. So if leaders and if parents are consumers of information just to be consumers of information and regurgitators of information, that is a very dangerous game to play. Roland, I think you're about to say something.
Yeah, because as a parent or a leader, your job is to build whomever it is up under you up into a place where they can take your place, where they don't need you. So, in order for them to feel like they are at that level at some point, you have to allow them to make decisions. You have to allow them to express how they feel to show you that they can do it. When my daughters, my oldest two daughters, when they first got out there on their own, they would lie to their little boyfriend or husband, say, I'm cooking this, that, and the other. They lying. They calling me. And I felt good about it. I mean, they did. They called me and they, Daddy, how you cook this? And, I felt good about it. But then I'm like, ain't nothing's wrong with that. But you got to teach your kids so that the cycle continues. So now when they get your age, they don't need, I can't eat because mama ain't cooked. Daddy ain't cooked. So leaders, when you if something happens, I was always taught one monkey not call nobody no monkeys, but one monkey don't stop no show.
One monkey don't stop no show.
Yeah. So if you go down,
King George.
somebody has to step in your place. Somebody has to make it move. That's how life is. So I got to train subordinates or children up to be able to take care of the next level of next generation.
I am not going to lie to you, Roland. When you started talking about cooking, I was expecting you to come up with a prop like a spatula or a pot or something.
Man,
I was
don't
waiting
get him
on it.
started. Don't get him started.
Mountain Dew Zero. Oh, yeah.
he's known for having the props, and so again, all great points. And the last piece, when it comes down to expert power, we have to be careful because sometimes, you've heard the old saying, "Knowledge is power, and he who has it controls it." So we have to. I think I said that right. So we have to be careful that when it comes down to expert power, we don't use it as a weapon because that happens a lot in the workplace. Just because this person isn't behaving the way that you want them to behave, or whatever the case may be, we'll withhold the information from that person to isolate them from the group, creating a divide within the group. So again, just the last point I wanted to add to that. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm going to bring this back to martial arts. I said this before. I have yet to go to a dojo where a martial artist or a sensei or a sifu has ever held a student back. They do not say get on my level. They say surpass me. Coach, you say this all the time. Parents, your ceiling should be your child's floor. I believe that can translate into the work environment too. You should want your subordinates or the people under you to get promoted or maybe take your spot or maybe get a spot higher than you, because that means you taught them well. That is something that you should be proud of. But instead, ego gets in the way. And instead of raising them to the status that you taught them to be, you clip them at the knees to keep your status. That can lead to your subordinates not wanting to be your subordinate anymore. You lose great team members by clipping them at the knees when they surpass you in certain things because you taught them well. I went through that at a job that I worked at. And to be honest, it kind of turned me off to all businesses in that sphere simply because of how that one person acted. You taught me everything that I needed to know, and I became damn good at it. So good that everyone else was recognizing me above you. But instead of saying, thank you for using what I taught you and being good, you clipped me at the knees because you thought I wanted your job. No, I just got good at the job that I was doing because you taught me well. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. Great point. Man, I appreciate that. Lisa Keys, thank you so much. We value you and we greatly appreciate your support. Always one of the our top contributors when it comes down to supporting the channel. So we just want to thank you again. And you just continue to doing what you're doing. We greatly appreciate you. I want to make sure I grab Miss Verlene McCoy's statement because it was awesome. She says to teach your child or team that you can't always be on top. That is key. I think when you teach your child that, when you teach your team member that, what you do is you start to remove arrogance out of the way. Every child goes through the minds. This is mind syndrome, right? But parents are responsible for helping them to understand, like, hey, you can't get the best of everything. You can't always be on top. So I think that is key. Teach your child that you can't always be on top, but as long as you teach them to do the best job you can and never lie to them about anything. I love that so much. Thank you for that, ma'am. That's an awesome statement. G. Jones, welcome to the show. Cassandra, think you said we answered your question. Code Talk just doing what he's doing, man. He just always drop in just nuggets of wisdom. So we greatly appreciate that, brother. Going down, I think Miss Verlene McCoy has another point on there as well. Always leave your door open. for your team or child to be able to come to you when they feel threatened or not sure if they don't. You know what? That is so good. I like that as well, because that's another form of expert power. When you are going through some version of adversity, you're looking to the leader or your parent to kind of be that voice that you need to pick you up out of that space. I talked about the emotion piece earlier, right? This is another thing, helping people to deal with adversity within the space. Parents are responsible for helping their child to manage their emotions when they cannot control the outcome of a thing. Leaders are responsible for helping their subordinates learn through the adversity that they're going through. The business world do it all the time whenever they go through a organizational realignment. Whenever they do an organizational realignment, they are forcing the organization back into the 5 stages of team development. They're doing it intentionally. That's one of the things they talk about in the boardroom. And so, what ends up happening at that point, you are forced to grow based upon that adversity. And the leader has a responsibility to point you back to the vision so that you can understand how you feel is important, but it's not the most important thing. The organizational goal is the most important thing. So, thank you so much for that, Ms. Vernon McCoy. Still dropping nuggets. Lisa Keys says, ethical considerations consider the authority given in the integrity of how you spend to the various concerns that may arise. Absolutely, absolutely. Let me see the title. Oh, Chris, you're unmuted. Go ahead, brother.
No, I was just laughing at Natasha's last comment about Giannis.
Oh, I haven't got that far yet. But she did say ethical considerations may be sharing of your knowledge, offering guidance and or solution when issues arise, and staying in the know as far as continuing to learn, develop, and grow. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me see. I think we pretty much got them all. Somebody, you can't win them all, Giannis. Okay, all great points. And again, thank you guys for adding the value that you're adding in the chat. Again, thank you to everyone who is supporting the organization. We value you. And Chris, you have the floor.
No, I was going to kind of elaborate on that because you see, Giannis and the Bucks got ousted in the first round. They didn't trade Giannis. They didn't trade Chris Middleton. They didn't trade Drew Holiday. They fired the coach. You understand what I'm saying? You cannot be a leader without the team, and the team has to trust the leader. Even though that coach won them a ring, beating one of the greatest teams to ever exist in the game of basketball, you got ousted in the first round by a play-in team because your team didn't trust you. Your team wasn't on you. Your team didn't believe in you. So the team leader gotta go.
Yeah. Yep. Great point. All right. So we're going to keep pressing forward. We're going to move on to informational power at this point. So informational power is the power that comes from one's access to information. Access matters. All right. So the first question that we're going to ask here is, as a leader or parent, what are some of the potential risks and benefits of using informational power?
Risks and benefits. I think when you're looking at informational power, sometimes you can have information without actually putting it to work. So you don't know that it works, but you're telling people to trust that you do. Trust the process, trust this, but you didn't actually do it. So when it comes down to it, when you're trying to teach somebody else, if you've never done it, then they're looking at you crazy because it's like, okay, how you know it works? Because then those questions arise where it's more about you actually having a hands-on approach to something rather than book knowledge or learned knowledge. And when it comes to business, when I was an instructor writer in San Antonio, I would teach the soldiers how to do certain tasks. And as a so-called subject matter expert, you're teaching them. But then when you come across other people of the same level, you're like, man, I like the way that they did that. It's different than what you did, and it may have a different step, 1 or 2 steps, or less. But you always got to be willing to grow through every process that you're in, and not think that just because you have certain book knowledge that you're just the residential expert and the buck stops with me.
Man, I've been looking at this from a couple of different ways. I like I want to go with the military way. And with the military, the way I see it is, hold on, I had a brain fart. Let me come right back. Coach Nordo, he got me.
It's all good, man. Chris, you want to jump in real quick?
Potential risk of using informational power. Roland hit it on the head. You might have the information, but you didn't implement it. It works in theory in your brain, but where's the tangible evidence that what you have in your brain works?
Yeah.
Potential benefits, using what you have in your brain to have something tangible and say, okay, you could do this. And here are the examples of how I used it. So that way, you know that it works. That's pretty much, you all know I'm a lowest common denominator, bottom line kind of dude. Informational power is just that. It's the power of having information. Theory and tangibles are two totally different things. Everything works in theory, but we need tangibles. Put your theory to the test. The law of gravity is real because you know if you throw something up, it's going to come right back down. The law of physics is real because two things cannot be in the same place at the same time. I can't sit in coach's chair and we both be in coach's chair. You understand what I'm saying? You got to move or I got to move. You understand what I'm saying? Equivalent exchange is just that. In order to gain something, you got to lose something. Bottom line, base level. Where are the tangibles? We need tangibles.
And also, when it comes to information, I think what some people do is they figure, since I have the information, I have the power. So I'm going to hoard on all the information. I'll teach you what you need to know, and that's it. So you can only go as far as I allow you to go, as far as I allow you to learn to go, instead of whatever information, whatever I got, I'm giving to you so that you can learn it and do with whatever you will with it. But what you do is you make people actually think, and I think that's one of the problems with people today. We don't have cognizant thinkers. We don't have thinkers that think outside the box. Everybody wants to think inside the box. Well, it says 1 + 1 is this, and 1 + this is this, and you only think on that plane. But when you start to say, "Man, I'm not in this box," where people, because I know 1 + 1 with me ended up with, it was 1 + 1. But I had kids, so I'm doing more multiplying than I am addition. So we have to be able to think and think on our feet. But when you control the information, you don't allow them to grow to that point where they can't think on it.
So let me inject one fine key point that differentiates expert and informational power, right? Informational power is the access to. It's like having a secret clearance. And so that secret clearance that allows me to get into secret compartmentalized information facilities. I have the access to the information. It doesn't mean that I know it all. I have the access to it. So because of that, that actually has it to the point to where I have power because of that. So I want to make sure I'm injecting that in because I want to make sure we're clear. I think when it comes down to the internet is a conglomerate of power, but there are certain hubs that it gives you access to. Google is one of them. YouTube is another. TikTok is another. And because of said access, some people don't necessarily like it simply because you have access to a plethora of information. Only thing you got to come on here, only thing you got to do is come on here and type in, how to, in fact, just I did it today. I was just joking around, spending some time. Me and my mother was laughing at it, right? Just type in cat slap videos. And you're gonna have like a bunch of cat videos, cats just slapping people, slapping things, and all kinds of stuff like that. So when it comes down to it, informational power is all about access to information. Right now, YouTube is really like cornering the market on it, because you can literally get a degree on YouTube, right? So that's the key. And so through that, what people have found that YouTube is a very powerful platform. You probably remember back, or not, maybe like 2 3 years ago, where Facebook had to go through like a trial because of certain information and things of that nature. So that's what we're talking about in essence. The thing I would inject to this is that when it comes down to informational power, the risks is overload. If I have access to it, I have an like literally an ungodly amount of information I can access. I can have so much information that I can access that I can experience some type of paralysis and just choose not to access anything because I don't know what I want to look for now. Or I don't spend enough time on any one thing to learn anything significant because I now have access to the gateway of information, right? So that could be a risk. A benefit of, if I have the ability to channel thought and I can focus on one thing, like the Empowering Perspective membership program, then I have the ability to get the information that I need, and I can streamline that thought to where I can learn and grow and achieve a higher version of myself within the scope of that access. So just keep in mind, informational power is all about access. Go ahead, Uncle Junior.
I got nothing.
I'm sorry, man. I apologize.
No, it was not you. It's not you.
All right, very well. It was you just came across so smooth when you said you got nothing though.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, I appreciate everybody's input, and again, what you said was definitely value added. I want to make sure I touch on some points before I move on. Natasha, she talked about the risk of informational power is having the information used against you. Key point. Key point, because access is key. If I do not allow you access to it, then you can't benefit from it. Now, I know that can open up a whole nother conversation, but again, trust me when I tell you that is a key point, and I'm glad you brought that to the table, Natasha. And for everybody who's hearing that, I want you to kind of marinate on that. What information did you not have access to growing up? What information did you not have access to in your community? What information do you not have access to now? Right now, then after you understand that, what can you do to gain access? Because when you gain access, now you can be kind of like a reservoir of information to other people as well. So I think that's a good point. Thank you, Natasha, for bringing that to the table. She says benefits of informational power is having knowledge and the information to make better decisions. Absolutely, I agree. Lisa Keys says informational power could leave the individual uninformed, lacking necessary knowledge. Yep, absolutely. She hit the nail on the head. Code Talk says sign an NDA. Non-disclosure agreement for those who don't understand what an NDA is. Not trying to insult anybody, but just want to make sure that everybody's clear on acronyms because we use acronyms all the time. Okay, the next question I want to get to is how can leaders and parents effectively use this type of power to educate and empower others while still promoting independent thinking and decision making?
I think I live life in a be no do format, where first of all I have to be whatever I'm trying to teach you to become, and I have to know about it, and I'm teaching you so that you will know it, so that you can become it and know it, and then while I'm doing it, you're watching me, and as you watch, you learn, you grow, and you develop your own style of doing it. You don't have to do it my way. I'm just showing you merely a way to do it, to get it done, that actually gets it done. You may streamline the process and make it easier, and you can come back and teach me, hey, dad, hey, boss, hey, whatever. You can teach me, hey, it works a little easier if you do it this way. And then we're both learning and we're both continuing to grow.
I like that. All right, they shy, so I'm gonna jump in. So
No, I mean that's pretty much it. That is
absolutely.
the most effective way to use that type of power. Educate, but allow a little bit of leeway for the person that you're teaching to maybe add something or remove something that does not need to be there to make whatever you are teaching a little bit easier. That involves letting go of your ego.
That's gonna go on a shirt, by the way. That's another shirt. We're gonna do a shirt with Chris Haynes, right? But no, you're absolutely right. I think it's important for us to understand. It's important to teach the what, not necessarily the how. Now, there are instances where we need to teach the how, right? But we don't necessarily pigeonhole them to our method of the how. We just say this is a way. That's like the NTC, the National Training Center method of coaching, right? This is a way. It's not necessarily the way, it is a way of doing a thing. But I like the concept of teaching the what, not the how. Because what happens in that scope, if I teach the what and let you discover the how, even though that might be a little bit more of a painful way of learning, I promise you that you will learn lessons within the scope of that you will never forget. And that's part of our this whole cycle of life that we go through. There's a lot of what's like we know what, but the problem is that we don't necessarily want to go through the struggles and the ups and downs, the ebbs and flow of the how. Why? Because it can be painful. But some of the best lessons are learned within the scope of the pain that you're going to go through within learning the how. So that's necessary. So I like what Roland said, brother, because you're spot on. Ken Rice, good to see you, my friend, and welcome to the show. Ken is a good a brother of ours. Roland know Ken. Uncle Junior know Ken. In fact, Ken was the one who introduced me to Uncle Junior, man. So good to see you, brother. I pray that all is well with you. And I see what you're doing with your clothing line, man. I like it. I like it. I like it. Let me see. Cassandra, I'm sorry. Yep, Cassandra says give the information and have tasks that implement the information. That way it is something that will stick with that person. Absolutely. Give the information and you can even put benchmarks in there as well and let them figure out how to go from benchmark to benchmark. And I think that can kind of help them go through that struggle as well. Natasha says teaching them to not rely solely on the information received. Gather information, research, and analyze. Man, she is trained. Listen, she's training the analyst. I love that. Gather information, research, and analyze info, then form your own opinion. Absolutely. That is absolutely one of the best forms of teaching people how to do a thing, but then allow them to allow independent thinking and decision making within the scope of that. So greatly appreciate that. Okay, moving on to connection power. And again, as we're going through these, again, if you guys have any questions about anything that we talked about, by all means ask, because that's what these fine gentlemen do so well. Connection power is the power that comes from one's network or relationships. This one is good. So, what are some of the key skills and qualities that enable leaders and parents to build strong connection power?
Active listening.
Ooh,
Um, if the people are not listening, then there is not going to be any connection. There's not going to be any trust. There's not going to be anything there. In many cases, the relationships or the organization won't be effective. You know, Chris has pointed out numerous times how important it is for both parties, the subordinate and the leader and the subordinate, both to play a part in the communication piece. You know what I mean? Listening to each other, getting the ego out of the way and focusing on the goal and or the mission or the children or the family, if we're talking about that sense. So it's I mean, if you can have effective communication, then you're going to be or active listening or effective communication, because if you're not actively listening, then you're not going to have effective communication. So you're not going to be able to get your point across. You're not going to be able to get the information across to your subordinates that they need to know, and vice versa. If you're not actively listening, if you're listening to respond, if you're listening to whatever, if your ego is in the way, or if you're just
You need
not
to be
being
right.
present or not being in the moment. You know what I mean? So I think that right there can really affect the overall ability to build a strong connecting power.
I like it.
I believe this is one of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules to life. Always listen to people as if they have something that they can teach you, because you do not know everything. You all said this a bunch of times all through this show. If you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. Once you stop learning, you are dead.
I think a good skill to have would be to treat everybody as individuals, because sometimes we say, well, you're a soldier or you're a kid or whatever. No, trust me, no two kids are just alike. No two people are just alike. So when you allow people to be within their individuality, they become freer to learn from you. Because if they feel like you care about them as a person and not just as who they're supposed to be, then it's easier for them to relate to you trying to teach them to become who you want them to be.
I'm gonna go a different route, and it's not really a different route. It's really the same route. It's probably going to incorporate everything you guys said already. But I'm gonna say humility. Humility to me is that thing that becomes the agitator of great relationships. Because let's just be completely honest. When I talk to you, I don't want to hear your resume. I don't want to hear how great and wonderful you are. I don't want to hear, like, if I ask you, case in point, how was work? I mean, like, no, I'm sorry. If I ask you, like, how are you doing? I don't want you to tell me about work. I didn't ask you about work. I asked you, how are you doing? That just goes to show, like Uncle Junior said, you're not actively listening. You're just waiting for the gateway to say what it is you want to say. So when it comes down to it, I think one of the hardest things to do is to humble yourself so that somebody else can talk. Ask questions so that they can talk. Meet a person and ask the person about them. Don't meet a person and give them your resume. Give them your file. Give them your microfiche, as we used to call it in the Army, right? Nobody really cares about hearing everything there is to know about you. If I just met you and you're telling me about your ex-husband from 23 years ago, why is that a topic of the discussion? And I just sat down and I ordered, hypothetically speaking, a Sprite at the bar, and you say, "Hey, how you doing?" I say, "Hey, how you doing?" And next thing you know, like, what brings you here? Oh, well, I've been married 23 years ago. I didn't ask any of that. I asked you what bring you here. That is the thing, and I'm sorry. That's somebody talked about pet peeves in the chat earlier. That is a pet peeve of mine. When I hear people ramble on and on and on about themselves and how great they are and things of that nature, I promise you, not only will this be a short-lived conversation, but you may not hear from me much after that.
Can I add an alibi?
Sure.
All right, I want to pull outside and go a little bit, I guess, outside of active listening. So if you go up one level, then it involves communication. Active listening is just one part of communication. So I just want to speak on communication in general. Because communication involves so many different things, I think that it's important that communication and building communication skills are vital to building a strong connection, because it's body language, it's tone of voice, it's inflection, it's eye movements, it's so many different things that go into communication that to simply say just active listening would be a disservice to how important overall communication is in general. You know what I mean? And I think that it's important because, like I said, that you can be in spaces where people you know don't have effective communication skills, and the conversations don't end up being what they need to be for the desired outcome. you know Whether it's a one-on-one relationship with a subordinate, you're trying to counsel a soldier, or you're trying to talk to a subordinate about something, or and the message gets misunderstood, or it's not clear, it's not understood. You know, so just overall communication in general is are definitely some key skills that need to be worked on in order to build strong connecting power.
I like
I
it.
believe Lisa Keys said it already in the chat. One of the, aside from active listening and aside from basic communication, another key skill and quality could be understanding your position in the network and playing that position without attempting to play that position in someone else's position at the same time, because it will not work. Everyone has a role to play. Miss Miss Lisa, you are correct. The word role is not a bad word. I'm going to pick on Miss Natasha for a minute. Miss Natasha from
Oh,
the
Natasha.
from the Bolden EP. I Miss Natasha might be one of the hardest working people behind the scenes that I have ever seen on a show. But I have never seen her actually on a show trying to be a host or attempting to outdo the host. She has a position and she plays it extremely well, allowing that channel to flow the way that it does. That right there, in a nutshell, might be the most important thing that you can do in a network, aside from not being a siphon and taking from the network and actually adding to it. You have a position to play it, because your position is important, just like the network's position is important. And you wouldn't be in the network if you didn't know how to play that position in the first place.
And I think to that point, if I just want to add to what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%, I think that is the perfect example of humility. Like she lifts up Mr. TMI, she lifts up the network. She doesn't want to be in the center. She doesn't want to be in the spotlight. She don't want to be the center stage. She's not saying, well, what about me? What about me? What about me? That's the point that I'm getting at. And when you start looking at leaders and parents who do that, like I think it's like for me, it's like taking your fingernails and going across a blackboard. Like a parent, imagine a parent raising a child just so that they can receive the accolades for raising a child. No, that's not how it works. Imagine a parent raising a child and trying to live vicariously through the accolades of that child and what they're achieving as they're growing up. Imagine a leader who actually does not uplift the team, that does not inspire a team, that has no desire to learn anything about the team members, right? But again, it's all about them. And so when you look at it from that perspective, that's exactly what I'm talking about with the whole humility thing. I think humility is one of the biggest things that we can actually do. And to Uncle Junior's point, that incorporates the effective means of communication. It incorporates the way that we respond to certain things and incorporate questioning and asking people questions that actually put them in positions. Oh, yeah, by the way, it's not a bad thing to put a person in a position so that they can receive the accolades for it. You set them up for success. That's what good leaders do. That's what good parents do. So, man, shout out to you, Natasha. Again, we see your work over there. And again, that's one of the reasons why we know that you're an awesome person. Plus, you always come over here and add value. So we appreciate that as well. Um, Man, we got to get to this last point, this last question, because we're running low on time. Um, how can leaders and parents cultivate these traits in themselves to establish positive, supportive relationships with others and promote healthy social and emotional development?
We say it and we have said it all through the show. Let go of your ego. That would change the game. Let go of your ego. You are not the smartest person in the room. To be real, you are not the most important person in the room. The group is important. Your child is important. Your team is important. Humble yourselves.
I would say definitely self-reflection. Um I'm big on self-reflection. When there's something going on in your life, I think it's important to go back, look at it, see why whatever happened. So, as a parent, sometimes that's how we get better. Sometimes we get better by hiring coaches. Sometimes we hire mentors, mindset coach description. different things like that. So we talk to Big Mama, we talk to Unc, we talk to, Pop, we talk to all of these different people. Sometimes we can get the information ourselves. Nothing wrong with getting information from other people. But sometimes you can't, sometimes things just need to be birthed from within. And I think sometimes when you go back and you self-reflect and you look at why X, Y, or Z happened, why the conversation with your child went left. You know what I mean? Why did that happen? Was it something that I said? Was it my tone of voice? Was it my inflection? Was it my aggressive posture? What caused me and my child to go through that and have that disagreement? And then you go back, you reflect, and then maybe once you come up with a solution or kind of sort of what happened or what went wrong in the relationship, you go back to that child or that subordinate, you have the conversation. You say, hey, look, I messed up right here, or you messed up, or whatever it is you work it out. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about getting to a healthy solution to whatever went on. Not saying that everything has to be bad. It could be good things as well. But just saying, you have the conversation and you try to figure out what's the best solution going forward. How can we avoid, some of the things that may have happened? So definitely self-reflection can promote healthy social and emotional development.
Oh man. And I think with the humility, with the self-reflection, I think we all should try to take, whenever we're leading, we always want to think that, okay, let me teach on the lowest level so that, because sometimes some people can teach or act so heavenly minded that they're no earthly good, or be so high minded or whatever it is. It's like, no, I don't need that. I need you down here. I'm on the low level. I always tell people, and I'm sarcastic with it, but it's like I tell them I went to public school because I want you to be at the lowest level so that everybody can get it. Because sometimes people get up here and want to pump themselves up and want to look the part and say that I'm the part, and not even, it's like they're untouchable. Not everybody can be touched. And when they feel they can't touch you, it's like, okay, I'll listen to a certain extent, but I'm not following you because I don't know that when you fall, you can get back up. Because I can tell you how I failed. I can tell you how I failed in life, how I failed in this and that. And I can show you my steps to rectify those situations and being a real touchable person.
You got to start at the baseline. You know what I mean? Like you don't walk up to a woman and start demanding, you know what I mean, the cookies. You know what I mean? There's a courting process that goes into it. I'm just saying.
That's called
Just
a
the
stalk.
same thing with any relationship.
Do we
You know
have
what I
time to
mean?
go into that?
No, we don't.
I didn't think so. I did not think so.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
Oh my
It's a
God.
process. I get it.
Chris, what you got, bro? I'm sorry, you already did your Uncle Junior said yours already.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just, I got a little flustered. I'm sorry. Um, so you know what? To me, it's a simple thing. And I mentioned it earlier that organizations go through, and it's something that we must go through as well. And it's change management. We got to go through a process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Right? You have learned some things in your past that is not so good, and you have been practicing them your entire life. So Uncle Junior said it. You got to self-reflect. Once you self-reflect, you got to identify the things that you need to change within your life. Then you have to learn how to not only change those things, but what does that new change look like? Then you have to practice it. And practicing that thing gets you to the point to where you start to replace the old habit with the new habit. It's not a short process. It's not a pill you can take. I promise you, you can't just take a shower and come out there brand new. It doesn't work that way. It's going to be a time consuming process. You're going to learn a lot about yourself. It's going to be some pain that's going to be involved in it. It's a humbling experience, and you may cry. Get over it. It happens. Everybody did it. Everybody experienced it. And guess what? We're not finished yet. As long as we live this thing that we call life, we're going to have to go through that over and over and over and over again. Or just choose complacency and accept what you got. That's just it. Those are the only two options. That's just it. So that being said, wonderful conversation, gentlemen. Listen, greatly appreciate you guys in the chat. We got to the point where we started to get pressed for time, so I don't want you to think that I didn't see your information. Ms. Verlene McCoy, Natasha, Cassandra, Michelle Ray, you guys were adding value. I just got too pressed with time because I want to honor your time. So we're going to go ahead and move into the final thoughts. And with that being said, we're going to start off with the young gun, Mr. Get out your ego and move. Get out the way. Right?
That was my final thought. Seriously, this has been a nice series. This has been a nice series. This has been a very informative series because we have properly defined power, the versions of power, and how to use them correctly. All of these shows that we have been on, everything that we have talked about, all revolves around a couple of things: letting go of your ego and being humble, and also being honest with yourself and understanding that there are things that you do not know that you do not know. Always be in the learning phase. That is my final thought.
Um, it's been a great 3 weeks. We've had a lot of great conversations, and I've learned a lot. I've expressed some of my experiences, some of my thoughts. I want to first of all thank all of you gentlemen for teaching me. I learn something every single week, and I know that for the most part, our final thoughts are kind of catered towards the audience. But I want to take a second to to thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Like, I learn something every single week, and I'm continuing to learn. I'm continuing to grow because of this platform. And I really appreciate everything. So, final thoughts. We've talked a lot about leadership, different types of leadership, different experiences in leadership, different all things leadership. So there's nowhere in the world that I could really sum up a final thoughts. First of all, go back and check out the other two videos. Um, Go back and check out the other two videos. But here's my final thought for real this time. I know Coach probably laughing in the background or smiling or something like that. But like I said, we talked about a whole bunch of different types of leadership. Leadership has a bunch of different layers. In order to be effective at leadership, you need to learn. You need to learn from people that are above you, and you need to learn from people that are below you. You need to learn from people that are the left of you. You need to learn from your experiences. You need to learn from other people's experiences. Once you have learned, you're going to have to continue to learn, and you soak in the information that you need, and then you pour out the information that your subordinates and or that your children need in order so they can grow and to flourish. So continue to always be open minded, be willing to learn, be willing to get more information so that you can be a better effective person, which will in return make you a better effective leader.
Experience is tried knowledge, and just like as experience change, so does knowledge. And higher levels require higher and new experiences, just like higher and new knowledges. So keep being and keep knowing and keep doing to become your best you, because that's all you can offer. You can offer the best you. If you offer the best you, you've given all you got. That's being a leader. That's it in a nutshell.
Listen, I greatly appreciate each and every person that's not only on the panel but in the chats and added value to this conversation. I want you to remember when it comes down to these 7 types of leadership power, you have formal power and then you have personal power. Immature leaders wield formal power. Again, immature leaders wield formal power. Now, there are times when they need to because subordinates just will not comply to the rules and regulation. But immature leaders lean on it. Mature leaders, they develop personal power through having a better understanding of themselves and then actually getting to the point where they actually develop people within their organization. Again, I talked about change management. You got to go through learn, unlearn, and relearn. So if you are a leader in an organization, if you're a parent, trust me, you are not beyond the point where you cannot learn. Again, get into the Empowering Perspective membership program, because we're going to have to record the step-by-step process when it comes down to developing yourself as a leader, when it comes down to these types of powers, and also utilizing these powers when it comes down to parents as well. And the only people who can attend those actually doing the live recording are the people who are in the Empowering Perspective membership program. So again, get in so that you can get front row access, because you get to ask your own personal questions during the live recordings. That's the key. Your questions and the answer become part of the development for the entire group. So I think that's important to say. So thank you so much again. So can go back to full. Yeah, thank you so much again for everybody who was in the channel on the panel. Thank you so much for everybody who attended this evening's conversation, and thank you for the people who are out there just observing and listening. We appreciate each and every last one of you. And listen, you guys have a fantastic rest of the evening and an even more phenomenal weekend. Oh yeah, by the way, tomorrow morning 10:30, me and Onita, we're gonna talk about love. So by all means, you can join. So again, have a great rest of your evening and a fantastic weekend. And we will see you next week.